Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rechak Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Genesis, the 31st chapter. And he heard the words of Laban's sons, saying, Jacob hath taken away all that was our father's, and of that which was our father's hath he gotten all his glory. So Jacob eventually heard, like this is like how the sons of Laban were speaking, right? Like, this guy basically came here and like kind of like swindled our father, and basically took everything our father had, and now he's become rich. And Jacob beheld the countenance of Laban, and behold, it was not toward him as before. So you could see the appearance, the look, and even the attitude that Laban had towards him wasn't like before, where it would be all cheerful and like, you can imagine kind of like when somebody is overstayed or overstayed their welcome. I think that's the same. And then eventually it just becomes like a silent tension. And the Lord Yahweh said unto Jacob, Return thou unto the land of thy fathers, and to thy kindred, and I will be with thee. And Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to the field unto his flock. And he said unto them, I see your father's countenance, that it is not toward me as before. For the God of my father hath been with me. And ye know that with all my power I have served your father. And your father hath deceived me, and changed my wages 10 times. But God suffered him not to hurt me. So Laban had been deceitful with Jacob, right, consistently. And that's why he says here, he changed his wages, so he might say, okay, you can have all the brown, the ring streak, the spotted ones. Then he might come back and say, oh, actually, you could just have just the spotted ones, or only the ring streaked ones. But he wasn't consistent with it, and he was always trying to find a way to pull one over on Jacob. But as he says, the Most High suffered him not to hurt him, meaning that the Lord had it to where whatever it is that Laban tried, it didn't have a negative effect on Jacob. One example being, remember a couple chapters ago, as we read that Laban had all the flock that would go to Jacob removed that very day before Jacob went through his flock to find it. But the Lord had it to where what? Jacob ended up having, more of the type of, the multicolored flock that he agreed on to be his. His started to be stronger and increase more than Laban's. If he said thus, the speckled shall be thy wages, then all the cattle bear speckled. See? And if he said thus, the ring streaked shall be thy hire, then bear all the cattle ring streaked. So every time he changed it, you can have this, but no, yours is going to be the ring streaked. The Lord will have it go in the favor of Jacob. Thus God hath taken away the cattle of your father and given them unto me. And it came to pass at the time that the cattle conceived, that I lifted up mine eyes. So after he speaks to his wives here, eventually as he's doing his work, one day, as he said, as the cattle conceived, basically in the time when they would get in heat and mate and so on, that he said, I lifted up mine eyes and saw in a dream. Now, this could have been a daydream, right? Because of the previous sentence makes it sound like he's actively watching the sheep, and then around the time when they would get in heat and begin to mate, he sees this like almost like a day vision And behold, the rams which leaped upon the cattle were ring-straked, speckled, and grizzled. And the angel of God spake unto me in a dream, saying, Jacob. And I said, Here am I. And he said, Lift up now thine eyes, and see, all the rams which leap upon the cattle are ring-straked, speckled, and grizzled. For I have seen all that Laban doeth unto thee. So, based on this, as he says, he saw it in a, in that dream. But this is the reason why when he, when the animals would mate, physically, yeah, Jacob was using this tactic of like showing them a specific kind of pattern, but the Lord in the spirit was influencing them. So Jacob could see here that in the spirit, the sheep might have looked plain, but by him seeing these multicolored sheep, the male multicolored sheep jumping upon the women and then mating with them, this was what was happening in the spirit, right? So you could say almost like outwardly they look like plain, but genetically, they look multicolored. That's why their offspring would come out multicolored. And this is the Lord showing Jacob how he was blessing Jacob because he had seen the unrighteousness that Laban was doing towards him. Verse 13, I am the God of Bethel, where thou anointest the pillar, and where thou vowedst a vow unto me. Now arise, get thee out from this land, and return unto thy kindred. And Rachel and Leah answered and said unto him, Is there yet any portion or inheritance for us in our father's house? So basically, after telling them all this, right, that at one point when he was watching over his father's sheep, his father-in-law flock, this is what he saw. So he's basically just like making sure they're all on the same page, right? That they don't feel like he's scamming their father or anything of that sort. And so verse 14, it says, so this is what they responded, is there yet any portion or inheritance for us in our father's house? This is like a rhetorical question to say, like, their response was like, it's not like we have anything left over here. Are we not counted of him strangers? For he hath sold us and hath quite devoured also our money, right? So we're practically strangers to him at this point, because when it says sold us, that was the labor that Jacob had to do for them, right? Because that labor came wealth. That time was equivalent to money because it was labor, right? And so that's what they were saying. We're pretty much like strangers. He basically sold us, right? Now we're married, and all that money, that quote unquote dowry, it's all going to his benefit. For all the riches which God hath taken from our father, that is ours and our children's. Now then, whatsoever God hath said unto thee, do. So they showed their support for their husband Jacob, to say, you know what, we're with you, and don't worry, all the riches, all the stuff that you've got really is for us. It's for our family, not for Laban. So whatever it is you got to do it. And Jacob rose up and set his sons and his wives upon camels, and he carried away all his cattle and all his goods which he had gotten, the cattle of his getting, which he had gotten in Padan Aram, for to go to Isaac his father in the land of Canaan. And Laban went to shear his sheep, and typically that there were certain areas where they would do this, and so it would be some part away from where their normal dwelling was. So Jacob, seeing this, took advantage of it, knowing that Laban wasn't around. It says here, and Rachel had stolen the images that were her father's, i.e. her father's idols. Because remember, Laban was related to Abraham, but from Abraham's brother's side, and Abraham's family were into idol worship. One of the reasons why the Lord separated him from them. So Laban's idols, Rachel ends up stealing, and Jacob stole stole away unawares to Laban the Syrian. What that means by stole away means he snuck away and left without Laban knowing. And it calls him Syrian because he dwelt in that region, in that he told him not that he fled. So he fled with all that he had, and he rose up and passed over the river, that is the Euphrates, and set his face toward the Mount Gilead. Now, in fact, let's look up here, Jacob's journey, Genesis 31, and let's see if we can find. Okay. I think we saw this one before. Journeys of Jacob. Nope, that's Abraham. Okay. They're not really showing me what I want to see here. Or maybe they are. I think this is, if I'm not mistaken, this is the body of water that where you get the Euphrates from here. And then the Tigris is on the other side of it. Let's look up here. Haran or Padan Aram Bible map. Okay, this might be. Zoom in. There you go. Nice. So we can see here the journeyings, right? So we see Haran or Padanaram, that region is over here. All right, it's still across the Euphrates, but as you go, you follow the body of water closer to Carchemish. So Jacob ends up fleeing and he crosses, right? Now in crossing, you may think, well, he has cattle, right? He has, a lot of them. He has children, he has women, he has camels. So how is he crossing the Euphrates River? Now, they weren't going across on the deep end, all right, to where they needed boats. Typically, for these large bodies of water, they had shallow areas called fords. And those were areas where you could cross because the water there was, it wasn't deep. So if we look up here, river fords, this is what it looks like. Something like this, or like this, or even like this, right? So it's still a part of the river, but it's not as deep. And then you're able to actually cross. So there were certain parts here of the Euphrates that shepherds or, people merchants traveling with animals and stuff, they would know, okay, this area is good to cross because the water is very narrow here. And you can cross even if you have like animals with you. So Jacob was able to cross, and as it says, he set his face toward the Mount Gilead. And it was told Laban on the third day that Jacob was fled. Now, though this was a lot of time, Jacob wasn't able to move very fast because he had children and he had such a large entourage, consisting of his gains that he had gotten as well. So he was able to put some distance, but not enough. And when Laban heard this, and he took his brethren with him, and pursued after him 7 days' journey, and they overtook him in the Mount Gilead. So now let's see if we can find where that is, if they show it on here. Okay, well, we have Gilead over here, but maybe it could be not far from here. So Laban ends up catching up to him. And God came to Laban the Syrian in a dream by night, and said unto him, Take heed that thou speak not to Jacob either good or bad, meaning watch yourself. And in other words, leave him alone. Because if you don't speak to somebody good or bad, it's almost the equivalent of not speaking to them at all. So this was really a warning from the Lord to Laban, saying, make sure you don't harm him or do anything bad to him. Just leave him. Then Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the mount, and Laban with his brethren pitched in the mount of Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, What hast thou done? That thou hast stolen away unawares from me, or unawares to me. So what do you think you're doing? why are you sneaking away? And carried away my daughters as captives taken with the sword. So you basically snuck out, you dipped out, you didn't say goodbye, you didn't say anything, you taking my daughters with you like as if they were your prisoners. Wherefore didst thou flee away secretly, and steal away from me, and didst not tell me, that I might have sent thee away with mirth, and with songs, with tabret, and with harp? So why didn't you let me know? I would have thrown a going away party for you, and it would have been all good and sweet. And has not suffered me to kiss my sons and my daughters. Thou hast done foolishly in so doing. So what you did was very foolish. It was very stupid. You didn't even let me say goodbye to my grandsons and my daughters. It is in the power of my hand to do you hurt. So I could really hurt you right now. But the God of your father spake unto me yesternight. Because remember, Laban was a powerful and rich man as well. He had influence, and he didn't just come alone, right? As it says, he came with his brethren, and there were a lot of people. So, he could have overpowered Jacob there. But as he's saying here, the God of your father spake unto me yesternight, so last night, saying, take thou heed that thou speak not to Jacob either good or bad. And now, though thou wouldest needs be gone, because thou sore longest after thy father's house, yet wherefore hast thou stolen my gods? And what this is saying is, I can understand, you being eager or longing to go, back to your father's dwelling, back to your hometown. But why did you steal my gods along with you, i.e. his idols? Now read some of these verses in the NLT, because, sometimes the Old English, this can make it a bit clearer. I can understand your feeling that you must go and your intense longing for your father's home, but why have you stolen my gods? And remember, at this point, Jacob doesn't know, because Rachel stole the idols, but Jacob had no clue. And Jacob answered and said to Laban, because I was afraid, for I said, peradventure thou wouldest take by force thy daughters from me. So basically, based on the way you were moving, I thought that you might try to pull a fast one, or you might just say, you know what, if you want to leave, you go alone. I'm keeping my daughters here. With whomsoever thou findest thy gods. So concerning the idols that you're talking about, you can come and search, and whoever you find it with, let him not live. Before our brethren, discern thou what is thine with me. So in the presence of everybody here, you go through and see if you can find anything that belongs to you amongst my stuff, and take it for thee. And if you can, then if it's yours, then you take it. For Jacob knew not that Rachel had stolen them. So in his mind, he's like, we haven't taken anything of yours. You can search. And Laban went into Jacob's tent, and into Leah's tent, and into the two maidservants' tents, but he found them not. Then went he out of Leah's tent, and entered into Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the images, and put them in the camel's furniture, and sat upon them. So a part of the clothing and burden meaning like the supplies that were strapped to the camel, she had put the idols in there. So these probably weren't like big idols. And she sat, obviously she was sitting on as you said, she sat on them. Okay, so this would be let's look into that word furniture. It says here, car, palanquin, basket, saddle. Okay. An enclosed riding space erected on the camel's saddle. So she basically hid it in there, and that's what she was sitting on. And Laban searched all the tents, but found them not. And she said to her father, let it not displease my lord that I cannot rise up before thee. So don't be, I understand, that I can't get up to, let's say, greet you or anything like that, for the custom of women is upon me. In other words, she said she was on her menstrual cycle. That's why she couldn't get up. And he searched, but found not the images. And Jacob was wroth. So now Jacob started to get pissed because he's like, yo, what's your deal, bro? Like, what's your problem? And chode with Laban. And when you go into that word, to chide is like, now you're getting into it with the person, right? To contend, right? To strive. It wasn't physically, but was with words. To make a complaint, to quarrel. So you can imagine voices being raised, and it's like, yo, now I'm really pissed off. And Jacob answered and said to Laban, what is my trespass? What is my sin? That thou hast so hotly pursued after me. So what is it, man? What have I possibly done wrong to you that you've been on my ass? Whereas thou hast searched all my stuff, what hast thou found of all thy household stuff? So now you happy you went and searched everything. Did you find what you were looking for? Set it here. You found something, right? So bring it here. Bring it here before my brethren and thy brethren, that they may judge betwixt us both. So go ahead, put it right here. Let everybody see it. Yeah, that you came all angry and shit. Now, what is it that you found that I've stolen? This 20 years have I been with thee, thy ewes, which is I believe it's female female lamb. Let's go into that. Yeah, a ewe, the females being predominant element in the flock. So if you're a female sheep or lamb. So as he says, thy ewes and thy she-goats have not cast their young, and the rams of thy flock have I not eaten. Reading this in the NLT, he says, just getting to the point, in all that time your sheep and your goats never miscarried. In all those years, I never used a single ram of yours for food. So for those 20 years, I took care of you. I took care of your flock with integrity. I didn't try to rob you. I didn't try to cheat you. I didn't, I took care of them, right? They had their offspring. I didn't eat of any of your flock. That which was torn of beasts, I brought not unto thee. I bear the loss of it. So if there was any that was killed of any animals of yours, I didn't bring it to you. If it was one that needed to be replaced, I would give you one of mine. Right? I took that as a loss. Of my hand didst thou require it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. Thus I was in the day, the drought consumed me, and the frost by night, and my sleep departed from my eyes. So I basically worked my ass off. In the hot sun, whether it was hot or not, I was out there working. In the cold, whether I was freezing or not, I was out there working. I barely got any sleep. Thus have I been 20 years in thy house. I served thee 14 years for thy 2 daughters, and 6 years for thy cattle, and thou hast changed my wages 10 times. Except the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had been with me, surely thou hadst sent me away now empty. God hath seen mine affliction and the labors of my hands, and rebuked thee yesternight. So Jacob wasn't, he was going in. But basically, as he was saying, pretty much, if it wasn't for the Most High, the God of Abraham and Isaac, that had been with him, Laban would have basically, and if the Lord hadn't rebuked him last night, Laban would have came there and then made up some BS on some, whatever, having the power to, and then basically taking everything that Jacob had worked for, including his wives. And Laban answered and said unto Jacob, these daughters are my daughters, and these children are my children, and these cattle are my cattle, and all that thou seest is mine. And what can I do this day unto these my daughters, or unto their children which they have borne? So as he's saying, all these, they're all, let me read that here, right? They're basically all mine. I can't really do anything to them. NLT, then Laban replied to Jacob, these women are my daughters, these children are my grandchildren, and these flocks are my flocks. In fact, everything you see is mine. But what can I do about my daughters and their children? Now therefore come thou, let us make a covenant, I and thou, and let it be for a witness between me and thee. So you know what? You say, you know what? It is what it is, right? Let's just cut it. Let's leave it as it is. We'll count it as water under the bridge, and let's make a covenant of peace. And Jacob took a stone and set it up for a pillar. And Jacob said unto his brethren, gather stones. And they took stones and made an heap. And they did eat there upon the heap. And this was basically like a covenantal meal, you could say, right? Where they made a covenant, but they ate, there, which basically confirmed it, because in the ancient world, when you shared a meal with somebody, it wasn't like, I'm just eating with somebody. It meant something significant, right? Because when you broke bread with somebody or when you shared a meal with them, it was more of an intimate thing than people look at it as today. And at that point, it meant that, okay, there was peace between you two, right? And that's basically what they did here. And Laban called it Jegar Sahadutha, but Jacob called it Galid. And Laban said, this heap is witness between me and between thee this day. Therefore was the name of it called Galid. And witness is like whenever, because the stone, the reason they would use inanimate objects like that is because if you leave a stone or a pile of stones somewhere and it's not touched, it will stay that way. If there's no flood, no natural disasters, it will stay that way. Okay. And so it is a perfect witness because it'll be like a monument. That's why when they build statues, they last so long. It would be like a monument to where anybody that sees it or anytime, anybody comes, this stone is a reminder of this covenant or this oath, basically covenant that they had between them. And let's look into this word, the names here. We have witness heap, okay, which is what Jacob called it. And Laban called it, let's see if we can find the name. Here we go. Oh, okay. Once again, witness heap. So this was just a different, likely Laban used an Aramaic dialect for the term, as to where Jacob probably used more of the Hebrew of his land there. But they basically mean the same thing. Verse 49, and Mizpah. So let me actually start 48 again. And Laban said, this heap is a witness between me and thee this day. Therefore it was called Galid and Mizpah. For he said, the Lord Yahweh watch between me and thee when we are absent one from another. And so it was also called Mizpah, the reason being what they basically said, right? That the Lord would see this and witness, even if we are absent from one another, the Lord would bear witness that we would honor this agreement. And it means watchtower here, okay, as the blue letter has it. All right, so continuing on. If thou afflict my daughters, or if thou shalt take other wives beside my daughters, no man is with us. See, God is witness betwixt me and thee. So if you basically go and take more wives, or if you go and, do harm to my daughters, the Most High will be witness of your violation, since I'm not there to see it. And Laban said to Jacob, behold this heap, and behold this pillar, which I have cast betwixt me and thee. This heap be witness, and this pillar be witness, that I will not pass over this heap to thee, and thou shalt not pass over this heap and and this pillar unto me for harm. So we've agreed that we will not cross over this to war or harm each other. The God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge betwixt us. And Jacob sware by the fear of his father Isaac, which is, i.e., the God that Isaac served, which is the same God Abraham served. Then Jacob offered sacrifice upon the mount, and called his brethren to eat, and they did eat bread, and tarried all night in the mount. And early in the morning Laban rose up, and kissed his sons and his daughters. When it says his sons here, means his grandsons, and blessed them. And Laban departed, and returned unto his place. And that brings us to the end of the book of Genesis, the 31st chapter. And Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha Kodash. And until next time, Shalom.